All right, good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us once again to another session of the Future of Work for the Asian Youth webinar series. So for today's session, we will be tackling the experiences of of Vietnam's youth. In the past, we've covered three countries from Asia. We've covered Taiwan, Indonesia, and Malaysia, and today it's Vietnam's turn. Over the past year, we have tried our best to persevere despite the compounding challenges brought upon by the COVID-19 pandemic. Many of us have shifted from our old routines to a more virtual stay-at-home mode of doing things, which I'm sure a lot of us have mastered by now. So still, we are lucky, and because we have jobs and are able to continue working from home, so we do find these opportunities very fortunate for us. So some of the worst affected by the pandemic are the youth, particularly those who have graduated from their programs in the middle of this health crisis. In the past months, we've tackled the employment prospects of Asian youth in an increasingly technologically demanding world. But the reality is they also need to navigate a world where the job markets have a surplus of experienced degree holders who are settling for lower level and lower income jobs in order to stay afloat and employed. In the past months, we have seen how for Taiwan, with a rapidly aging society and an oversupply of highly educated and highly skilled population, are now looking to China for immediately higher salaries. For Indonesia, how the slow rate of modernization of its manufacturing sector, the constant need to improve education standards, and the need to upskill and reskill its young labor force is causing it to lag behind many of its ASEAN counterparts. And of course, there's Malaysia's need to increase social protections for gig workers, which we're now seeing to become an increasing trend, not only in Asia, but in the world in general, as well as the need for them to incentivize efforts to prevent brain drain from happening in their country, to improve digital infrastructure and expand cash assistance to those affected by the pandemic. And how all of these things are painting an image that there is still a lot to be done to help ensure that the Asian youth are competitive enough to survive in the workplace. So for today, we shall see how Vietnam's case fares in comparison with its neighbors. So to show you today's session, we will be opening up with the remarks from our partners or friends from two CAS offices, Ms. Rabea Brower from CAS Japan and Mr. Peter Girk from CAS Vietnam, and then followed by a context of Vietnam's case by me. After that, we'll be jumping straight into the big chunk of today's activity, which would be the main presentations by our speakers. After which, we'll be having a brief Q&A. Some of you have sent your questions in advance, and thank you very much for sharing your questions. We forwarded them to the speakers, but please feel free to share your questions or leave comments in the chat box, and our colleagues from CAS and TAEF would be picking them up and sharing it with us so that we can accommodate them if we have enough time. After that, we'll be inviting Dr. Alan Yang Hao from the TAEF, Executive Director of the TAEF, to give his summary and 2 cents about today's session, as well as give a closing to our future of work for the Asian Youth webinar series. So to open today's session, I would like to call on Ms. Rabea Brower, CAS Country Representative to Japan, for her opening message. Rabea?
Thank you very much, Yuri. I should be not muted, I hope, and I do hope that you all can hear me. It is my pleasure to open our last seminar of the series, and I like to welcome all our participants in Asia and in Europe. And I like to thank our speakers in Vietnam who greatly contributed to the results and to the success of the series. Thank you, the three of you, for being available today to discuss the findings and to help us to put those into perspective. And then, of course, there is a team behind the grand project. I warmly welcome and thank Yuri and our friends from TAEF, and also Chris at the back end, and my colleagues at CAS Japan at the Regional Economic Program, SOPAS. Thank you both for your tremendous support. I am Rabea Brower, the head of the KAS office in Japan, and also the director of the Regional Economic Program, under which umbrella, we implement the 3 project series. Number 1, Future of Work, under which is happening with this project right now, multilateralism and free trade. And our last pillar is advancing women leadership. And all 3 pillars are essential for Asia's growth and Asia's future. And after 2 years, we have achieved numerous publications and studies, and we were able to share our policy recommendations to our target groups. We are meeting today, as I said, for the future of work for our youth. How our young generations will be able to prosper and grow greatly depends on post-COVID recovery, on the use of digitalization, education, of course, favorable business environments, startup support, exchange networks, and a peaceful environment. Sustainability and resilience and the idea of leaving no one behind should be our driving factors. And with Vietnam, we have today a case study that is in many aspects highly interesting. As Yuri already mentioned, the development of its population due to its policies is very stable. The level of education is very high. The economic development in the past years became, I would say, a showcase for ASEAN, and politically seen as Vietnam very stable with a clear aim to foster diplomatic ties with thriving economies, a nation such as the EU. How exactly this translates into favorable conditions for Vietnam's youth, we will hear today by our speakers, Dr. Han Vietnam from the Vietnam Academy of Social Science, Dr. Bin from the Economica Vietnam, and Ms. Wan from our Rutland Partner Agency. So once again, thank you, dear distinguished speakers, for your support today. To open this seminar is of special importance to me personally, because I will hand over in a moment to my direct successor, Peter Gerke, who took over the CAS Vietnam office in 2016, when I moved on to headquarters to lead the Asia and Pacific department. And ever since then, Peter is successfully and thrivingly managing the CAS office in Vietnam, which is still dear to my heart, and I have still very fond memories. So a big hello to everybody who's watching in your office, Peter. Peter has since then introduced many new projects and strengthened our ties with all leading institutions, with universities and the business community. And I am very, very glad that he is able to join us today and to address you all personally. So without any further ado, Peter, I like to hand over the mic directly to you. And thank you for joining us once again.
Okay, thank you very much, Rabea. Thanks, Euro, and hello to everyone listening and watching. The topic of future of work for Asian youth seems to be very trendy and has received a lot of attention, I think, also on the ASEAN level by the ASEAN governments, and also internationally supported by organizations like UNICEF or ILO. And it is, of course, very relevant for Vietnam as well. And I would like to start with shed a little spotlight on the framework of Vietnam that we are working in here. So as Rabea already mentioned, Vietnam's economy is growing. It's growing basically since decades, and it has been even growing throughout the pandemic. Also last year there was a slower but still a growth. Also Vietnam, yes, indeed, it is politically stable, also since decades, I would say. Vietnam has still a large informal work sector, although also the formal work sector is growing. And what is also growing is the middle class in Vietnam, in particular in the urban centers. Also a look at the demographics can be interesting, because it shows that Vietnam still has a rather young population, but it will transform into an aging society within the next 15 to 20 years. That are the predictions. Now, what does that all mean for the youth and its participation in the labor sector? For almost all graduated Vietnamese students, one of the most frequent questions asked by either their peers or elders is, have you already got a job offer? And this question is asked because, or let's say, despite having an academic degree, it is not always easy for young graduates to enter the formal labor market, and in particular to find jobs that are then also matching their qualifications. So a lot of Vietnamese jobs are still in the family farming, in household enterprises and uncontracted labor. And so these jobs are characterized basically by low productivity, low earnings, also very limited workers' protection and limited social security. And at the same time, automation and digitalization are on the rise here in Vietnam in particular. And also global trends, globalization, climate change have a significant impact on the work of the future. So these factors require specific education, training, and specialization. So it will be important for the Vietnamese government to adjust education programs accordingly in order not to form the next generations against the requirements of the labor market. And as it has been said already, the skills of the Vietnamese students are generally, and also in a regional context, considered to be good, or at least good enough to also attract foreign direct investment flows into Vietnam. But still, the education is considered also very, very academic. Yeah? So additional training is often required, more practical skills and also experiences are needed, for example, through on-the-job trainings, as well as soft skills, or English, or even digital skills. And allow me, please, to have a very, very brief look at the regional level, which is also important. There are mutual recognition agreements to acknowledge qualifications and careers on an ASEAN level. And that is a really important tool also for the Vietnamese youth to have a perspective and to be mobile in the future. So in short, there are challenges, but there are also opportunities in the future of work for Vietnamese youth, and they are in charge to grasp those opportunities, the young people. And apart from knowledge and hard skills, they need to train their soft skills, they need flexibility to adapt to the changes of the world. But at the same time, also the government, of course, is in charge to create respective and conducive framework conditions for the young people. That would be my little overview from the Vietnamese side. And I would like to thank everybody here and hand over back to Yuri. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Rabea and Peter, for opening up for today's session. I guess my part here, some of the things that I'll be mentioning have already been touched upon by Rabea and Peter. So hopefully, if you do hear them again, just try to just brush through them if I find them unnecessary anymore. So just to give a quick context of Vietnam. So Vietnam has the third highest population in Southeast Asia, with about roughly 96 million people, calling it home. That's still a huge number, and actually is in the high figures for, or high ranking for the entire world. It is blessed with an abundance of natural resources, and although the country is blessed with natural resources, there are some topographical challenges because the country is also hilly and forested all throughout. The Vietnamese population is also ethnically diverse. That while the Viet or the Kinh ethnic groups are at the majority with 85% of the population, there are in fact a lot more, about 54 other groups like the Hmong, Dao, Thai, Nung minority groups. I'm not pronouncing them right. I'll try my best next time. But basically, it paints the picture that it is a very ethnically diverse country. The country had been heavily investing in agriculture in the previous decades, as mentioned by both Rabea and Peter a while ago, but have since liberalized its trade and economic policies, paving the way for rapid growth and effectively reducing its poverty rate to rates that, well, enough to lift a lot of people from destitution. The GDP per capita rose to more than 5-fold in the 2000s, and increasing from over about $400 to roughly about 2,300. We need to update this figure, but that's still a huge spike up. And this has placed the country in the lower middle income bracket. So that's a huge growth and change. It still relies greatly on agriculture, however, being a major exporter of agricultural products such as rice, cashew, coffee, tea, and rubber, among others. Heavy investments in R&D has also contributed to the country's booming economy, establishing centers of excellence in science and tech, as well as opening new education and career pathways among the youth. Today, the country enjoys high literacy among the youth at about 95% in general. However, as mentioned by Peter a while ago, the education system continues to be scrutinized for being outdated, often lacking practical training and applicability, which results to a large number of graduates being unable to find suitable jobs or ending up with a skills job mismatch if ever they do find work. While Vietnam's poverty reduction has lifted millions of people out of extreme destitution and has dramatically improved the standards of living, some social issues have also arisen due to either the modernization and urbanization process or economic transformation that has been happening in the past years. Right, so without further ado, I would like to introduce our first speaker for today. Our very first speaker is Dr. Do Tha Khan. Dr. Khan is the director of the Center for EU Studies, Institute for European Studies at the Vietnam Academy of Social Sciences. His primary research concerns industrial policy and its impacts on labor issues. He was project manager and team leader to various international and EU-funded projects in his field, and was recently manager to the project Empowering Civil Society and Workers, which was funded by the European Commission. He's also the Vietnam lead to the project called Competing Regional Integration in Southeast Asia. It is a pleasure to have you joining us this morning, Dr. Khan. The floor is yours.
Yeah. Thank you very much for a presentation on the industrial worker and perspective on my present. Okay.
Would you like to be the one to share your screen, or I can share it for you?
I will try. Okay.
Okay. No worries.
I will try one more time. Hope it works this time.
It's okay, Dr. Khan. I'll share it for you.
Okay, it works. Oh no.
I'll do it.
There it says. Okay.
Here we go.
Okay. So today I will talk about industrial workers and that perspective on the future. I take this from first-hand data we collected from we conducted in 2019 and 2020. We conducted please move to the next slide. We conducted in four years focus on the role of we enhance the role of the civil society and that the labor civil society in Vietnam. And in that we have many activities, but one of the most important activities is field research on it that for it's for the policy advocacy for industrial workers in Vietnam. We have already followed this topic for almost 10 years, but every 5 years, every 4 years we conduct one field research, and we see that the life of the workers both is the same. It's the same, and situation seen during the last 10 years. Please move next slide. Next slide, please. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Next slide. Let's see. Oh.
Should I proceed? No?
No.
Dr. Khan?
Yeah. The screen doesn't move.
We are now at the types of liver
I keep
function.
on.
Should I? Dr. Khan?
Okay, I continue to talk. So our field research was conducted in Central and the South Vietnam. Each part of the country we conduct fields. In the North, we on Bắc, Vĩnh Phúc and Hải Phòng province, and so Đà Nẵng and Quảng Ngãi, South, city things, and we choose two sectors to conduct the field. It is the garment and two sector because then for the labor sector, and for electric is it's often regarded as technique or intensive and we use about 2,200 workers in all. And you may for industrial worker in industrial park, they are very young, and especially in the sector, because electronic sector start to come to Vietnam about 10 years ago, and now electronic sector, like for example, Apple is now to some in Vietnam, in Bắc Giang, and also in these two, the female workers are they are mainly female workers. And you can see in the slide about 38% is 25 years old, and 26 to 30 is account for most of percent. They are very young, and for male and female, the research focus account for 32%, 72%, while workers they are less than 30%. For the contract, here I want to make a contract because it's decisive for the because with in the term labor contract, according to for CSO, see that they are more stable. They have more stable jobs than those who have that's the size of the contract. But from the we see that in the in the north, more people tend to have more fish than in the south. Here, I would like to add, because of the labor reason, often we found in the industrial park in the north, the focus specialize in the electronic sector. But in they are quite balanced between the government and electronic sector. But in the south of Vietnam, much more focus on garment sector than nutrition sector, because as you know, because in ZIPO conducts the research fieldwork in province, where it's based. Samsung is have its own industrial park in Bắc Ninh, in Phong Industrial Park, and events are located around the provinces, like for example, like Bắc Giang, Vĩnh Phúc, Hải Dương, and Hải Phòng. So in Hải Phòng, we conducted in Trang Duệ Industrial Park. It's by LG, and also it's very around. So we can see. So in our sample, the more than 1,000 workers we interviewed are mainly electronic workers. Here we can see first the Thai contract, mainly in the north, almost 67% workers they sign a fixed term contract, while in the south less, only 28.5% sign a fixed term contract, and contractually the implicit for the north only 20, and in the south 63%. Because in the south, foreign investor to invest in very early in early 1990s. But in the north of Vietnam, it's quite like a Samsung. They just in Bắc Ninh province. That's 10 years ago, and even for the manufacturer, in Thái Nguyên 4 years ago. So often for the worker in the north, they are electronic workers, and they are very workers, and they are younger than the workers in South Vietnam. We can find many workers in South Vietnam in garment sector 50 years old, but it builds the workers more, just under 30. For the workers in the north, they tend to are more worried the situation of contract. They sign a fixed term contract. They are quite worried about their contract, because they may not, the factory may refuse to renew the contract when it is, and for now, because they sign, so they are quite neutral, or they don't worry at all about when the workers about they prefer to the type of contract, and most of the workers it's like 70% of the workers they prefer definite contract, and also in the south even about 96% they prefer term contract. So it means that the high demand from the work, the stable reflect in their prefer to the time. Another thing is to the industrial work. Only it quite surprised, because for us, because only 2% of people would like to continue with to work retire. Quite very low. Quite very low. Almost 47% of interview workers don't want to work. They are retired. It means that they want to job in the future. And for the, we ask workers what will they do if they leave the industrial work in park, and most of them say that they want to go home to start up with with their own business, like for example they can open and or they go to learn how to become the hairdresser and or go to open spa or yeah. And also about 26% of the worker answer that they will come back to the village to work as a farmer or to work as a work earner. And some about almost 10%, they have no idea about their and one important things for the suitable of security system, it's social insurance. In Vietnam we call social insurance, but in Europe we can call the pension insurance. Because if they follow industrial work and continue to contribute to the pensions insurance fund, they will have the pension when they are old. But more than 60% of the worker answer that if when they leave the industrial work, they will get back the insurance premium. It means that they will no longer involved in the social security system. In Vietnam, it's easier. It's easier to involve in the health insurance, but it's very difficult to involve in the pension insurance because we have a pension insurance, but the premium is quite high according to the law. It's quite high if they contribute. So often workers answer that they will not continue to contribute because they have to manage, they have to afford the life for their family, so they don't have enough resources to continue with the social insurance. You can see from the slide of getting insurance backed by business sector, and we can see that they mostly they will take back about 60% in the agri sector and about 62% in the government sector. They said that they will get the premium back. It's very interesting that we met a very old garment worker in the South Vietnam. She is 50 years old, and we asked if she wants to continue until she retires, but she said that okay, she can work 1 or 2 years more before she retire to leave the job before 55 years. I mean before the age of retirement. And she said that she will get back the premium social insurance premium, because she said that she don't know if she can live until she how many years she live after retirement. It's quite typical for the reason for industrial workers. Yeah. And we also asked for the pledge to live after retirement from the workers. And of course, they are very young, still a long year to come for the retirement. But mainly they said that they will come back to live in the village. Only about, like in the sector, about that 12%. They said that they will stay in the city. And more than 80% they say that they will come back to the village. Also in the garment sector, it's almost the same. And for worker in the north, they tend to more workers tend to stay in the home village after than though in the south. So our conclusion is that the future work for industrial workers is quite uncertain because for them they are very young, and many of them they, for example, like in education sector, many of them they have a university degree, but they cannot find a job in the city, so they come back to the province and find a job. They could go with temporary job, so they can get some income to support the family and also accumulate for the future, and they're sure they will live it. Also, it's uncertain because the working condition is in the factory is also hard, especially for the industry sector. For example, many industrial workers said that they cannot, they have a problem with their eye after a few years because they haven't looked into the telescope for a long time. For a shift, they have to look at it for 12 hours. It's quite hard to follow. And also, they have to work both in the day shift and night shift. For example, like last month, we conduct in-depth interview with workers in Samsung, for example. They said that it's very hard for them to strike between the day and the night. They work 4 days in the night, and then they off for 2 days, and then they start again for 4 days in the night time. So they work in day and night. They change a lot, and many workers, how to say, fold. They feel tired and they fold out in the factory for the first few days of the shift. Secondly, also it's very hard for the worker when they live industrial life to continue to contribute to the volunteer social pension insurance because their limited income. If they live it after 30 years old, it's very hard for them to find a new job in the formal sector. Often they have to find the job in the informal sector in the city or somewhere. Maybe it's true for electronic, but it's not true for garment because the garment sector, the salary is quite low. So often they accept also old workers to come. But for electronics, they accept the workers less than 30 years old. Especially during the impact of COVID-19, many electronic factories, they also have to dismiss the workers and refuse the old workers. It poses really a big challenge for the social security system as well as for the worker welfare after retirement, because they have to come back to the informal sector and they have to rely on their children when they are old. And so we think that industrialization, policy on industrialization, and also the policy on social security system need to be reviewed. And also the education policy also need to review, because as we can see from the framework that young workers, they are mainly come from the rural and the mountainous area. Few workers we found the city or urban and so if we focus on the education, the rural area and also mountain area, balance with the city, with the urban areas. I think that there will be a big social gap in the future for Vietnam. For attention.
All right. So thank you very much, Dr. Khan, for your presentation. We will also be providing a link for a copy of your presentation in case some of our audience would like to see to review it on their own leisure. So you did highlight that there is a huge difference between the choices that people make depending on which part of the country they're from. I also saw that there are similarities between Vietnam and other countries that we've covered in the past months about the need or the demand for greater social protection, and also the need for us to review the condition of education within the country is actually it does have huge impacts on the choices and the opportunities that people have following maybe when they reach the years of retirement, and also in terms of their decision of going back to whether or not it's informal or formal employment. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Khan. So I'd like to proceed with our next speaker. Our next speaker comes from the private sector and is a licensed tax agent by the Vietnamese General Department of Taxation. Ms. Xuân Vo is a tax manager at Rodel and Partner Vietnam, and has more than 8 years of experience in managing complex tax planning and compliance for foreign invested companies in Vietnam. She also advises on tax implications of cross-border supply of goods and services. Ms. Xuân has been deeply involved in advisory services for a number of investment projects in Vietnam, particularly trading and services, manufacturing, software development, and renewable energies, among others. We are looking forward to learning from you this morning, Ms. Xuân Vo. The floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Yuri, for the introduction. So today I would like to give my insight on the Vietnamese youth labor force, of which I think I have worked with them in my company, and also I also know them at some of the students from the university. So I hope that it can give you some insight on the current Vietnamese youth labor force. I'm sharing my slide. Hello?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, so firstly, I think the labor market of Vietnam since last year has been affected by some factors, by some main factors, notably that is the you can see from the slides, that is the free trade agreements that Vietnam signed with other countries, or the free trade agreements that Vietnam is a member of. The increasing number of the free trade agreements have significant impact on the Vietnamese labor market, and also from the COVID-19, which is a big pandemic that affect not only Vietnam but also the world. Also, it has a significant impact on the Vietnamese labor market and the youth labor force also. And other factors like environment changes has always have also changed the structure of the current labor force. And notably, this is the revolution of the technology, the second, the fourth industrial revolution. And Vietnam has early access to the internet, so Vietnam has been influenced by this significantly, and also the change in the population structure of Vietnam As you might know, the population of Vietnam, although we have a high ratio of young population, however, the population is aging. So all of this have impacted the overall labor market of Vietnam, and also change and also impact on the Vietnamese youth labor force. So in this slide, you will see the position of the youth labor force in Vietnam. In this presentation, I will talk about the youth labor force in the working age of 15 and 24, because they are new to the market, that they are very important to the labor market, to the labor force of Vietnam. As you can see, the youth labor force in the working age of 15 to 24 accounts for approximately 13% of the total Vietnamese labor force. But the number is decreasing over years, as you can see. In 2016, it is 13.8%, but to 2019, it is decreased to 12.8%. And the next thing is the unemployment rate of the Vietnamese youth labor force. The youth, the overall unemployment rate of Vietnam in 2020 is 2.2% of the total labor force, which is approximately 1.2 million people. However, the youth unemployment rate already accounts for 34% of the total national unemployment, which is approximately 0.4 million people. And notably, the youth labor force is easily affected by the changes in the labor market. And in 2020, due to the third outbreak of the COVID-19, the ratio of the Vietnamese youth who is not participating in the labor force and not in the education increased significantly, which you can see accounts for 16.3% of the total Vietnamese youth, which is approximately 2 million youth of Vietnam in the age of 15 to 24, who does not participate in the labor force and not in education neither. This shows that the Vietnamese youth labor force is vulnerable because they have little experience and lacking of skills in compared to other groups of the labor force, who is more skillful, and also the increase of the need, which is the rate of Vietnamese youth not participate in the labor force and not in education. It raises the issue of unemployment and also early school leaving, and also labor market discouragement. So I think when a new generation joins the workforce, they often bring with them the traits, the characteristics that have been shaped by their living style, by their habitat and previous experience. So I think it's helpful to understand their characteristics, which will maximize their potential to create value for the labor force of Vietnam. As you can see from the slide, this is it shows a generation change, where the youth labor force of Vietnam now, who are born from 2006, they are called the technology inherent generation, or the Generation Z. They have, from my observation and research, I noticed that they have the following characteristics. Firstly, they have early access to technology. Yeah, so they are the most proficient in technology amongst in comparison to the other group of the to other generations. This is because the internet has been in Vietnam since 1997, and after that it was followed by the appearance of the social network of the Facebook, YouTube, and iPhone. So technically, with the young labor force of Vietnam, their life since their birth has been related to the internet. So, and also thanks to this, they are more globalized in thinking and acting. And the second thing is that, the young labor force in Vietnam today, they are more confident and independent than the previous generations. They are mainly based on their personal preferences and abilities to select their career more than being influenced by the opinions of family or friends. So that is why they have a clear career aspiration, and notably the majority of the young people today, they like freedom, and they have a passion for entrepreneurship, and they tend to choose like open jobs in the startup environment or freelance. And also the young labor force today, they have a higher self-study ability than the previous generations. This is thanks to the access to the different resources of materials on the internet, so they can learn independently without instruction anywhere and anytime. And last but not least, that they are the trend maker. Although they are not, they only account for about 20% of the population of Vietnam. However, they create most of the trend of the youth today, and the trend not only affect the people of their age, but also many people born in early period. So in general, I think the labor force, the young labor force today of Vietnam, they are rich in energy, in enthusiasm, and dynamism, and with a high level of energy and willingness to take challenges and to endure the pressure at work. So I think they have a good expectation of advancement in their career and professional development. However, they still have weaknesses, which is cannot be avoided. Firstly, they lack of expertise. This lack of expertise not only in experience but also in the working attitude. I think for the working attitude, it is mainly roots from their personality, because they have high opinion that they might less likely to obey or to follow instruction, but they would do work in their way. And from my observation, the integration ability of Vietnamese students after graduation in the new working environment is still weak. They have the ability to adapt to changes, the practical skills, and the working styles are also significant challenges for the Vietnamese workers. And also the quality of the young labor force is limited. The rate of trained labor force is low, and lack of skilled labor or the labor quality has not met the needs of the market. The gap between vocational training, vocational education, and the demand of the labor market is growing. Moreover, the shape of the economic model and structure causes a short in the supply of the labor market. While the professions trained in school have not caught up with the trend of using labor of the enterprises. And the second thing is that they lack of soft skills. I think this is because they are young and and they have not had much working experience in the working place or working with others. And for young people, for the Generation Z these days, like they spend much time on the internet, then maybe they will have less communication in person with other people. But at work, the soft skills such as communication, teamwork is very important, and to perform the work well, as well as to withstand the pressure from work. And I noticed from my personal experience that the young labor force today, they has low tolerance to critics at work. Although they are young and they are dynamic and confident with their personal opinions, but they are afraid of being criticized. And because of that, they are, some might not unable to withstand the pressure of work and annoyed with the criticize and demands.
Hi, Ms. Xuan. I would ask you to please wrap up your presentation.
Hello?
Yep, could you please wrap up your presentation? It's almost time for it. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your presentation. One thing that I wanted to highlight is that based on your presentation, we've seen something that has been recurring in the previous sessions as well. And one of the things that most of the speakers would often say is that there is available manpower or labor. However, it is true that they do not necessarily meet the skills required by the labor market. A lot of the countries we've touched upon before, some of them have highly skilled and highly educated youth. However, the available jobs do not necessarily match with these skills. So one of the comments raised by our speakers would be like, there's the need for a reform in education so that the programs would be matched with the available jobs. And these experiences have translated to almost all of these countries, no matter whether it's a country, a rich economy, or a lower economy state. So I guess the case of Vietnam is very much similar as well. We'll be touching on that a bit later during Q&A. I believe there's a question that actually hits on that specifically. So thank you very much, Ms. Xuan. And I'd now like to proceed with our third speaker. The last speaker for today's session is currently an economist, managing director at Economica Vietnam. Before his current role, Dr. Bin served as senior economist and policy advisor at the German Technical Cooperation GIZ, or GIZ, as researcher at the National Economics University, and as analyst at the State Bank of Vietnam. His main areas of expertise are enterprise development, private sector development, business environment reform, governance, and competitiveness. He has been proactively involved in initiatives by the Vietnamese government on the reforms of the legal framework for enterprises, labor markets, enhancing economic governance and competitiveness, and improving business environments. Aside from these, Dr. Bin has held capacities as working advisor to various ASEAN members through their ministries, as well as advisor to a number of transnational organizations and NGOs. I'm sure we'll be learning a lot from you this morning. The floor is yours, Dr. Bin.
Thank you, Rabian and Peters. And do you hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you. I can hear you. I guess we're just having a bit of a technical issue here. So, Dr. Bin, can you hear us? I don't think he's there.
Hello?
Yes. Go ahead, Dr. Bin. There you go.
Can you hear me, Yuri?
Yes, yes. We can also
Is
hear
it okay?
now. Wonderful. Thank you.
All right. So I will be presenting about the trends affecting the futures of work for the youth in Vietnam. So this was based on some of the latest research and also studies that we did about the trends in Vietnam and how it is. So if you look at Vietnam, Vietnam is population now is about 96 million. That was the figures for 3 years old. So with this number and we that is according to the forecast by the United Nations Populations Fund. So that means that in the future, this would have a strong implication on the youth in Vietnam and also on the job landscape in Vietnam, where the countries become an aging populations in a very short term. So it is also have very strong implication for the labor market in Vietnam at the moment. So if you look at some of the overall picture, the labor force in Vietnam keep increasing in the last decade. So now the labor force in Vietnam is about 54% of the population. 90 60 million people. The labor participation rate in Vietnam in 2020 is to some extent despite the fact that the populations see that the labor participation rate in Vietnam is still much higher than the global average of 48%. So if you look at deeper into these figures, so it was also mentioned in the presentation by the previous speaker. So the labor force in Vietnam is about 56% of the total, but it is still about 44% that is outside the labor force. So that is also something that and what affect the labor force in Vietnam.
I think the connection of Dr. Bin is a bit unstable. I just wanted to let everyone know that we will be sharing copies of his PowerPoint, and hopefully we'll just be waiting for Dr. Bin to try and get back to us. But otherwise, I'll be sharing the slides where he has stopped, and our colleagues will be sharing them as well to you via the chat box for you to review them on your own. Let's just see first. Right, so I guess Dr. Bin has disconnected. We'll see if he'll be able to join us again very shortly. I would like to, maybe while we're waiting for Dr. Bin, I'd also like to throw a question very quickly to one of our speakers. I know this is not yet the proper Q&A part, but I just wanted to raise a quick question to either Dr. Khan or Ms. Shun, okay? So we have one question sent in advance by one of our audience. Ms. Shun, are you there?
Yes,
Ms. Shun? Okay.
yes.
So this question goes to you directly. And the participant was asking, what do you think are the key advantages and disadvantages for the Vietnamese youth in terms of establishing a career in the private sector compared to the government sector and academia? And as a follow-up to that, how do you think entrepreneurship and the gig economy will change the youth's prospect of work, and how would they be entering the job market through this?
Hello. I think that for the private sector, firstly, the working environment is more competitive, and is characterized by the performance-based career growth, and maybe mostly have better compensation in comparison to the government sector, and academia. And I think the key advantages of the Vietnamese youth today in establishing a career in the private sector is that because they are young, they are dynamic, and as I mentioned, the new generation now, they has a clear career aspirations. So the private sector would be an attractive in environment for them to prove themselves in comparison to the government sector and the government sector and the academia. And for the disadvantages for the young Vietnamese labor force to join the private sector is that yes, because it is a competitive workplace, so it requires a high level of expertise and soft skills also, of which it is true that our current young labor force has not fulfilled up to the demand of the market. So for the entrepreneurship and the gig economy in the Vietnamese labor market, I think that it will increase in the Vietnamese labor market, and actually it's increasing. Today, the new generation, they are independent and in thinking and in acting. So they would, of course, they prefer the part-time work and freelancer work, or they are doing startups, and they are not so interested in the rules and regulations. But they want to focus on the quality of work. So I think for the entrepreneurship and the gig economy, which will provide them more balance between work and life, would be the answer for their expectation. So I think the prospect of entrepreneurship and the gig economy is very positive and would be increased in the Vietnamese labor market in the future. And the young people and the young generation today, they are active and they are willing, they are eager to join such sector. But I think that it would be more helpful if they can, they are with the more knowledge and skills. So like how to do a startup, or that would be helpful for them, so that they can take with them and to create their own career.
All right, thank you very much. I think that's very interesting that you've highlighted the in Vietnam you're currently seeing an increase in gig work. I think as follow-up to that question, it's more of my question than the audience. I'm just curious though, like the increase in gig work, you saw this happening recently, given particularly that, given COVID, a lot of people lost their job, and so they've shifted and looked at doing informal work. Like, do you see this as being a viable alternative to full-time work? Should COVID end anytime soon, do you think that people would still continue with their current gig work? Should companies and opportunities open up again?
I see. Well, I think some might prefer coming back to the formal sector, because maybe they prefer stability and like a secure in the salary in comparison to the gig job. However, I think because it depends on like the needs and the actual demand of the labor force today, because some might they might prefer work-life balance and flexibility in the working hours, and they are not interested in the regulations at the workplace, for example. So yeah, they might stay with the gig market.
Thank you very much. Okay, I guess I could go first next to Dr. Khan. This question goes to Dr. Khan. So the research that you've conducted was done in different regions of Vietnam. Did you or your team observe any regional patterns in the young industrial workers' perspectives in terms of the future of work? And should we incorporate regional perspectives into the research and in finding solutions to sustain the young industrial workers' future? If yes, how do you do that? And as follow up to that, what can be done, do you think, to level out the playing fields when it comes to work opportunities for workers across the different regions of Vietnam?
Thank you very much for the question. I think that of course we conduct the research in different regions, but we let's focus on two sectors, garment and electronics. So it's sometimes it does reflect all the aspect of the working life for young people. But yes, we can encourage the regional perspective into the research and find a solution. to study the workforce or the worker in the future. But I can come back to the discussion before mission about the opportunity of work. We can see in Vietnam, because that the population is quite big, and also the every year about 1 million of young people that means the force. So it really a challenge for the government to create jobs for the work for the young people. And as I mentioned before, it's quite impaired urban and the rural area, especially mountainous area. As is that for the young people in the urban areas, they have more opportunity to study. It's easier for them to invest in the formal sector, like for this sector, for example, or also investment sector. But for the people in the rural and the mountain area, it's very hard for them to work for the state office or also invest the sector, because either skill and also in language, for example, it's very weak in area. So we found in industrial zone, industrial park in both north and south, that both the workers, young workers, they come from the rural area. So it's very hard for them to stay the job, especially in the and but for them it's an easy way to find a job and to find livelihoods in terms of income in the rural area, in farming. So because why? So in the industrial park, there are low demand on the skill from often workers they don't train before. They just went, for example, in the garment sector or secondary school. It's okay. Electronic sector, it's higher, but they need only from the graduate from the high school. The high school degree is enough, and then they will provide training for workers for about 1 week or 2 weeks, and then they will learning by doing. The older worker will teach. So, and every year they read the workers, and it's because here we the reason from the interview, because say that they don't learn things from the factory work, and they don't hope that they will use their skill from the factory to apply to the future job. Because if they said that if they continue with the electronic sector, of course they will apply from the previous job, but they will move to another sector, or move from electronic to garment sector, for example. The skill from electronic will not in useful thing for in the future. So because I want to mention that both electronic sector they are both labor intensive sector, and this is just a manual worker. They are not technician any longer, and so so to sustain the job for the worker, I think that Vietnam the industrial policy is, but we try to attract the more technology intensive sector than the labor it is. Even for the initial, now we have enough for the initial production, like for Samsung, LG, or maybe in the near future is Apple. But it doesn't mean increase suitable job for, because if the salary increase in next few years, like in China, we think that like Samsung will move away to another market, another country where the wage is lower.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Khan. I think just wanted to highlight a few things that you've mentioned there. That there's a need for, I guess to paraphrase, there's the need to reskill and upskill. Also, the young workers that we have there in Vietnam. You also mentioned that there's the need for them to equip. To like maybe identify or know from themselves if they actually want to stick with their current line of work as opposed to moving, because like there's the chance that if they do want to transfer to a different sector, the skills that they have currently might not be transferable. That's one of the concerns. The other thing is, like you also touched upon, the need for Vietnam to open up to higher value sectors or industries as opposed to just sticking with low value industries, as this would increase profitability in the long term. But also in the flip side, it also highlights that there's the need for maybe a change in paradigm, change in program offerings, so that people who finish programs who eventually want to move on to higher level or higher value industries would have the necessary skills for this. But thank you very much for sharing. I guess I'd like to ask one more thing, but let's keep the answers very brief, to a minute for each of you. This is a general question, and this is a question for now. COVID-19 has been a surprising and significant interference into the labor market. What do you think would be the short-term impacts of COVID-19 on the Vietnamese labor market, especially for the youth? I know this is like very logical, but please also add value to this by sharing, like, how do you think young people can overcome these difficulties, these short-term difficulties posed by COVID-19, especially if they're wanting to integrate themselves or enter the labor market? Let's start with Ms. Shun, please. Just 1 minute.
Yeah, I think the COVID-19 is a big challenges, and many people, including my friends, have lost their job due to the COVID-19. But I think because it is an impact on everyone, and not only Vietnam and the individual only. So we have to familiar with it, like the new normal, and we utilize this opportunity when maybe we can accumulate the knowledge during the time that we are off from work. We can learn new skills so that we are in new knowledge, so that we will come back stronger after the pandemic. Yuri, you mentioned some may move to the informal sector where they will do the freelance work. That is also a way that to improve their living condition, and at the same time they can accumulate the knowledge and the skills at the same time to overcome this pandemic and come back better after it.
Thank you, my friend. Dr. Khan, can you please give your 1 minute answer?
Yeah, our film research last year is it's in the South Vietnam. It's right after the first wave of COVID-19 in Vietnam. We conducted research in May 2020, and we found some remarkable things, finding that also some companies, they have to close their business because they cannot have the order from, they didn't receive order from foreign market. But also some factories, they have to recruit more workers to produce, and it's make quite balanced. And you can see that last year the volume of trade from Vietnam is quite stable, and we still have economic growth for more than 3%, about 3%, and so that it does affect much in general. But in micro level, we can see that some factory have closed. For example, we find a factory owned by Taiwanese they produce the equipment for sports. They have to close because no sports activities was organized during the COVID-19, so they have to close. But some factory nearby, very close, they produce the cloths for at home. So they have to recruit work because they receive a lot of order from foreign market because people stay at home and they have demand on the clothes so stay at home. So it's quite parallel to the labor markets. Of course, it's a lot. It creates quite big problem for the old worker, for example, in the factory in Saigon, in Ho Chi Minh City, for example. When they close the factory, many workers they already work for almost 20 years. For the companies, they have to stop their job, and it's hard for them to find the job at 50 years old. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Khan. Dr. Vin, do you have an answer to that question as well? Just have 1 minute.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that the question is about the interference of the COVID-19 into the labor market. It has already has a lot of impact. It has reduced the number of jobs available for Vietnamese young men and women in Vietnam. And we can see that the temporary effect is that the number of the unemployment rate in Vietnam among the youth has been increasing. And so it is now among Vietnamese youth, among 100 Vietnam young men and women, 10 of them don't have jobs. And secondly, and many of the jobs are now in the informal sector. There are many and more jobs in the informal sectors. So it is also an issue for Vietnamese young men and women. But COVID-19 also pushed up the development of the digital economy in Vietnam. And there are more and more jobs that is created by the digital economies in Vietnam. Digital economy in Vietnam has been growing at 38% last year and the year before. So that create a new opportunity for Vietnamese young men and women. But as it was mentioned in many of the studies that the skill and expertise of Vietnamese young men and women are not yet prepared for that. So they need to skill, they need to upskill, they need to improve their knowledge and their availability in terms of the readiness for the digital economy. So we see that in the long term, there would be more and more jobs that is created by the digital economy that Vietnamese young men and women need to be prepared for.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Vin. Yeah, I guess we're losing you again. Well, thank you very much to our speakers for sharing your insights today. Okay. I know that we've been having a lot of technical difficulties, but again, still for staying on. I'd like now to invite Dr. Alan Yang, Executive Director of TAEF, to give his final thoughts about today's session, as well as maybe close this Future of Work series. Dr. Yang, please.
Thank you, Yuri, and also my special thanks goes to our three wonderful presenters for the very insightful sharing of the presentation on Vietnam's currents. So, am I clear? Yes, okay. I think my remark will begin with my short response to Yuri's final question. How the Asian youth or how Vietnamese youth will suffer and also will equip themselves with new technique and also skill for handling the challenge imposed by COVID-19. I think this is a very good question, especially from our cross-national observation and also comparative studies. It is not only the challenge for Vietnam per se, but also to the ASEAN counterpart and also to Taiwan. Undeniably, Asian youth and also the young people, not only in Asia, but also in other parts of the world, are very vulnerable due to the pandemic challenge, but they are also very flexible and also they are quite knowledgeable in utilizing the new techniques even better than their parents and their seniors. So I think during this period of time, there are definitely a lot of challenges imposed by the global pandemic, but the youth, we can utilize this chance to learn more skills. Regarding to our serious topic of the series, the future of work. That means the technique and skill for the young labor force to learn, to keep learning, and also in to safeguard their benefit. I would like to recall Yuri's remark in the very beginning. Our dialogue series is to ensure the Asian youth to survive in the pandemic era and also after the pandemic era. But I would like to add more, not only ensure the right and also the capacity of the Asian youth, but also to advance the mutual understanding among different sectors. For example, what is the need from the private sector for a new demand for the Asian youth in different countries? And what will be the help from the government sector or public sector to facilitate the Asian youth to acquire more technology and also to acquire more skills? In the case of Vietnam, I think I benefited and learned a lot from our three presentations. It is true that there are increasing number of labor force from not only from the urban area but also from the rural area, and there has been existing the social gap, not only the digital gap but also some other knowledge gap and other social gap among them, among this young generation. Not only in Vietnam but also in Thailand, in Cambodia. Many young people traveling from provinces, not only from the urban cities. So they are facing challenge and also facing some new difficulties. But we also witness some opportunity in the case of Vietnam, especially mentioned by our previous speaker on the aging society, and also the opportunity for signing FTA and economic partnership with European Union and also other countries. And just as I mentioned, the pandemic challenge also turned this challenge into more opportunity for the young people. Vietnam, it is true that Vietnam is a resilient country in fighting against COVID-19 during the past 1 year. And we also witnessed the improving capacity and also the stability, political stability of the Vietnamese government in handling the social and economic transformation. And Vietnam is also a very vibrant market in attracting foreign direct investment and also the contribution from other countries. For example, Taiwan. Our Taiwan business sector has already contributed quite a significant number for the Vietnamese local economy and also to increase the job opportunity among the young people and young labor force. So we are highly paying attention to the current situation of Vietnam and also to seek how to contribute to benefit Vietnamese people, young people, in acquiring the new capacities and also in developing the skill for the future of work. So on behalf of Taiwan Asia Exchange Foundation, during the past three webinars, we are very happy and honored to collaborate with our counterpart CAS to develop a very insightful dialogue, inviting speakers from public sector, For example, the Workforce Development Agency of Taiwan's Ministry of Labor, and also in Indonesia's Ministry of National Development Planning. And we also invite the Director of Industrial Affairs to share his insight. Not only the public sector, we also, thanks to the contribute led by CAS, we also successfully invite some business leaders and also some think tank expert and scholar and policy expert to share their insight with us, just like today. It is a very important channel for the ASEAN members and also Asian countries to exchange notes and to accumulate some kind of regional perspectives on how we can work together with our European counterpart and also our partner institution to jointly handle the challenge imposed by not only COVID-19, but also the social economic transformation. So finally, I would like to thank again CAS for the wonderful leading effort. And also I would like to convey my personal special thanks to Yuri for your kind and leading coordination in this wonderful webinar series. We had an internal discussion on the continuous progress with CAS office here in Asia. I think I would like to propose maybe two directions for your consideration. The first one is our chairperson agreed that we can try to expand more cross-national studies. For example, including Thailand and some Indo-Peninsula countries like Cambodia, Laos. They are a part of the Indo-Pacific market, rising market and resilient countries. So we can explore more local perspective and national insight from their perspective, from different sectors in these countries. And that can be a very important references for our understanding to the rise of the ASEAN community as a whole, and also national references. That's for one thing. We would like to continuously work with CAS on expanding more case study, national profile study on this, so that we can accumulate those analyses as not only the monograph or individual report, but also a very useful cross-national references for our friends in Germany to explore more regional and local dynamic and currents of the rise of the Indo-Pacific. I think this is the first note that I would like to share, and also the proposal. And secondly, it will be better after we combine all these 4 webinar series. We can do some feature article or executive summary of the cross-national comparative study. And it will be important to highlight how the need from the private sector is, and also from our dialogue working with other public sector officials, what will be the help or the policy incentive from the public sector and from different government, so that we can summarize on that and to generate some policy recommendation for individual countries, and also for Taiwan as well, how we can advance our regional engagement with this national government and also local government. And it will be our pleasure to continue working with CAS on this further analysis, and also to provide a very useful and insightful policy recommendations for the stakeholder in public sector, private sector, and also in the think tanks.
All right.
I think this is, I would like to stop here. And once again, thank you, my friend in CAS. And we do hope that we can invite you to visit Taiwan to continue our dialogue in person, to attend the Yushan Forum this year. And also after the pandemic, we are more than happy to visit CAS in Singapore, in Japan, CAS office, or even the headquarters in Berlin. And apart from our partnership with CAS, we would like to also to learn more from our speakers during the past 3 seminars, and for developing a very constructive institutional partnership for discussing the similar or related issue in the forthcoming future. So finally, I would like to wish all of our presenter and our friends in CAS all the best, and also wish you great health and success as well. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Thank you very much, Dr. Yang. As Dr. Yang has already mentioned, we look forward to more partnerships, more collaborations in the future between TAEF and CAS, and also between TAEF and our organizations and our speakers. That concludes our Future of Youth for the Asian Youth webinar series. It has been wonderful learning about the different experiences and different facts, different cases of the countries across Asia. So we've had Taiwan, Indonesia, Malaysia, and today we have Vietnam. And true enough, we've seen similar trends, but also in some countries, there are also unique traits that we need to hide and also explore in the future. As our speakers have echoed over and over, we have rising challenges being brought about by the changing landscape. COVID is one of the biggest ones we've experienced and encountered so far, and it's very interesting to see the future direction of the future work for our Asian youth. With that, I'd like to close the session and close this webinar series. To our audience, thank you very much for being with us for the past 4 sessions. It has been really wonderful. We look forward to seeing you again in the future. Hopefully you'll join us for future workshops. Thank you very much and have a great day. Goodbye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.